کاوش مدیا.
Though elected President Biden related to the recent attacks in the United States that are attributed to Russia, we want to dedicate this event to the cyber attacks by Iran and to discuss these topics because we truly believe that these cyber attacks are threatening not only Israel, but also United States and others around the globe. Last year in Israel, we experienced unprecedented cyber attacks by Iran. Only last week, there was an infiltration to few logistics infrastructures in Israel and cyber attack against Alta, which is a company that is affiliated with the Israel Aerial Industry, the IAI. Second, everything is personal. We here in Alma Center experienced few cyber attacks from the Iranians. Well, the pattern in these attacks made us understand that the Iranians are using the same pattern to infiltrate into think tanks around the globe, not only here in Israel, not only in Alma, and I will tell a little bit more about that later.
Thank you, Sarit. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the introduction. And it's always great to see you flourishing and doing such an important job. It's the idea behind all these activities of the Iranians with cyber, which is not new at all. They've been in the business for a long time, both as defenders and as attackers. Everybody remembers the Stuxnet about 10 years ago, but also their attacks throughout the last decade. The fact is that the reason is that it's very simple. Iran looks at itself as a potential empire that has the mission of spreading its ideology all over the world, but in the first place in the Middle East and within Muslims, and then later to the rest of the world. And it believes that it has the capability to do that because of its human resources. It's a big country. More than 80 million people live there. It's a huge economy with all the resources they have, oil and so on and so forth. And also the history and their ideological position and religious position gives them the capability and the need, everything that is needed in order to become such an hegemon power in the region and beyond it. Iran, as I said before, understood early on that it has to develop not only defensive but also offensive cyber capabilities in the context of these strategies that I mentioned. Cyber defense is critical to deny and prevent harm to its strategic nuclear and economic infrastructure. And what they do with the cyber in this context, first of all, they collect information for cyber, for kinetic, for diplomatic, and for other damaging operations that they carry on. And if you look at the last operation with their dissident for ZAM that they brought in and other operations, even these kind of operations need the cyber capability in order to be performed. Of course, for many other reasons, they need information, they need to collect information. Secondly, they conduct sabotage operations, and they are able to do that even in Israel, as you mentioned in the beginning, Sarit. This is something that they've shown again and again, even lately, maybe even last week. Why is the cyber so good for Iran? First, in order to carry out cyber operations, you need qualitative human resources, and Iran has plenty of that. Some of them, many of them work for the state. The Iranians have something like 10 cyber organizations that are dealing with cyber operations, either both defensive and offensive. They are based on these capabilities of their human resources.
Can you give us some examples of cyber attacks against countries outside of Israel, and what's the difference? Is there a difference between the way they are attacking Israel and what they are doing outside of Israel?
Okay, talking about Iranian capabilities, let's remember that these guys, they invented chess about 5,000 years ago. So since then, they just got smarter and smarter. and they have good skills, they have good human resources, and they have money to invest in creating capabilities in the cyber arena. The Iranians attack all the time Israeli targets, US targets, and I'll mention a few in a couple of minutes, but they do it all the time. They do it for a couple of purposes like were mentioned here, and they are getting better and better from time to time. Well, you mentioned sabotage. Just a few years ago, there was an Iranian attack on dam near New York, the suburban of New York.
آنچه در مورد ما میگویند